This is every role explained in Counter-Strike 2, and at the end, we'll go over how they mix together. Number 1. Lurker. The Lurk player's job is to catch enemies off guard and provide map information. This means you're either flanking the enemies or playing away from sight where enemies are likely to rotate towards you. It does not mean spend the entire game looking at the minimap trying to get a flank. It also doesn't mean you always go the opposite way of your team. You start to lurk when you have the opportunity and reason to lurk. Number 2. Entry Fragger. The Entry Fragger's job is to get a pick during the beginning of the game or during a site execute. The Entry Fragger doesn't have to be the best player on the team either. If the Entry Fragger dies but gets traded, that can allow your team to take the site, meaning the Entry Fragger has done their job. You can play Entry Fragger on CT side, although it's not necessary every round since the enemy has to come to you. Number 3. The Anchor. The Anchor is the player left in charge of a site, typically by themselves. Usually, you switch to being an anchor after the first 20 to 30 seconds have gone by, or if you stopped a site execute and you don't know if the T's have rotated. As the anchor, your main job is to tell the team when to rotate when you first hear enemies. This means if you miss your first few shots and you have multiple enemies coming, you can do your best to stop them, but try to keep your life until you have backup. If you're alive, that's another player the enemies have to worry about. If you die, the enemies will take your position and make it harder for your teammates to retake site. Number 4. InGame Leader. The InGame Leader is responsible for making plays, giving your team direction, calling audibles, and sometimes making callouts for players who can't make them. The leader doesn't have to be the best mechanically, but they should know the map well and have experience with Counter-Strike. If no one is giving direction to your team and you're losing, speak up and call a play. See if it makes a difference. But if you're doing good and no one's calling plays at the start, then don't call plays at the start. You can still be an in-game leader by calling a rotate when your team is standing like dumbasses, changing the direction of the team when the round starts to fail, and giving good callouts without crowding the comms. Number 5. Support. The support player's job is to throw good utility for the team and either get trades or switch to playing Lurk. The support player should know the most lineups, so when your team wants to execute a site push, the support player can do whatever the rest of the team can't. You could also have your teammates drop you smokes at the beginning, so you can throw everything while your team goes into a site. Number 6. Bomb carrier. It's everyone's job to get the bomb down, but most of the time, the team will designate a bomb carrier. The bomb carrier should never be alone or push into a site first, since both of these can give CTs control of the bomb and make the round 10 times harder than it should be. If you have the bomb and you want/need to be the first person in the site, drop the bomb behind you to a teammate before you go. You should also take caution when trading if you have the bomb, since if you lose the trade, you'll give CT side the bomb. When your team is executing a site take, you need to focus on not dying too early and getting the bomb down as soon as you have the window to plant safely. Don't plant the bomb when your team is really far from sight, because if you die, the CTs will be able to defuse the bomb before your team gets there. I have a guide on how to plant the bomb more often at the end of the video. Number 7. Rifler. The Rifler, as the name implies, should have good aim and a rifle. Being a Rifler isn't really a position, it's more of your status in the game. It's a Rifler's job to push the fight forward on T side, and on CT side, the Rifler's job is to hold entry points and long lines of sight if you don't have an opper. If your team is force buying or going eco, think about trading your top fragger a rifle for an SMG so they can help you win the round. Number 8. Opper. The opper, like the Rifler, should have good aim and an op. Hold down long lines of sight to prevent enemies from entering. If you miss a shot, all of your power is lost and the enemies are going to push forward. So having a good opper could change the round dramatically. The opper needs to also know the right time to move positions, since that's what really makes you dangerous. It's much harder to deal with an opper if you don't know where they're at. If you have a good opper, make sure to get an op whenever possible. If you're opping and you don't have a lot of money, you could just buy the op by itself, or you can get a Kevlar with no helmet, since if you miss, you're going to immediately swing to cover, or the enemy would have killed you regardless of armor. Number 9. When to pick a role. If you didn't know about roles before, you might have put together which roles look like your playstyle, and this is how roles are usually picked. Unless someone asks to play a certain role, which rarely happens, players will gravitate to the role that best suits their playstyle. There's 3 situations where you'd have to change your role. The first is way more common, just switching depending on what's going on in the round. Like switching to being anchor after enemies back off site, switching to lurk when you have a good opportunity to flank, or simply picking up the bomb. The second reason you might switch is if you're solo queue and your team has a gap in the structure. For example, if your team doesn't have anyone watching middle, you could start opping to have that covered. Or if no one is attempting to catch flanks, you could switch to lurk. If no one knows smokes, then you could be support and ask for smokes. The last reason to switch roles is if you aren't doing good at your role. Sometimes you have a great game being an entry fragger, but then the next game, you aren't so lucky. If that happens, ask to play a different part of the map and switch up your playstyle. This is a team-based game, and if you want to win, work with your team to find out where you best fit in the match and do your best. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.